This is a guide on how to create a graph for your Colorimetry Lab, but you can use this for any of the graphs that we're going to be doing in AP Chemistry. So the first thing you want to do is open up Google Sheets, start a new Google Sheet, and you're going to add your data into these cells. So I always like to put my headers, whatever I'm going to want to put on the X and Y axis, I'll put as a header at the top. So for the Colorimetry Lab, we did concentration versus absorbance, and if you add your units here, remember your headers are your titles are supposed to have units also. This is concentration in molarity. The other thing we're going to have to do for this is in order to graph something, it all has to be numbers, because we're going to be needing to make a scatter plot. Scatter plots only deal with numbers, no text. So if I have an exponent or scientific notation of some sort, I can't put times 10 raised to something in here. So in my header, I'm just going to add that notation in here. So all of these numbers are times 10 raised to the -6 power. And there we go. And then we can put our numbers in. So I had a concentration of 0, 2, 4, 6, 8, and 10, times 10 to the -6. And then I add in my absorbances, 0. The next one is 0.095, 0.185. So you're just going to add in your lab data here. And then what you're going to do is we are going to create the chart now. So in AP Chemistry, a lot of times we're going to want to have a relationship between these two X and Y axes. And so we want to create a line of best fit. The easiest way is actually not to make a line graph, but to make a scatter plot and then create a line of best fit in your scatter plot. So select all of your data, including the headers, and then we're going to insert a chart. And it's usually pretty smart and will pick the right chart for us. But if not, we can change this. So over here on the right hand side, you can see it picked a scatter chart. And so that is what we want. Okay, so there's a couple of things we're going to change on this to make it easier to use. So the first thing, notice we already have our axis titles on here, concentration and absorbance, which is good. The next thing we want to make sure is to add grid lines. So right now it's very hard to tell what this data is, and if I were to have I'm going to create a line of best fit. In order to interpolate data in between, I'm going to need more grid lines. So we're going to go over here, customize, and at the very bottom one, it says grid lines and ticks. We select that. I'm going to start with my vertical axis first, and the major is fine. It's the minor that we're going to change. So the count right now, there is none. And so I want there to be 9 lines in between all the major ones. So that gives me 10 in all. So if I put 9 there, notice now that I have 9 little lines, horizontal ones, that go between the absorbances 0.1 to 0.2 to 0.3 to 0.4. All right, and we're going to do the same thing on our horizontal axis. We're going to add 9 here. And now we've got grids. And if you want to, you can change the color of it to make it darker when you print it out. All right, so after we have grid lines in here, one of the things we're going to also need to change is our title. So we don't actually ever put graph titles on here. What we're going to do is change this chart title to a caption. So we're going to, you can click on it and it actually takes you there, but if not, you can also go to customize again. And we're going to go to the second one, chart and axis titles. So we want the chart title. And right here where it says title text, we're going to change this. And we're going to change it into something that tells the reader what they are looking at in this graph. So something like the absorbance of different concentrations of blue dye number 1 solutions. So remember, we made lots of different solutions of blue dye, and then we measured the absorbance of them. All right, so now we have our caption on there. We have our axis titles. We have our grids. So one of the last things we need to be able to do is add our line of best fit. So again, we're going to go over here to customize. What we need is our series. So we're going to add a trend line to our data, and our data is the series. So click on series, and the data that we want to add a trend line to is in a drop-down box. Now we only have one set of data, but if we're doing a different graph in which we have more, then you would need to select the correct one. Scroll down further, and at the very bottom are these boxes. We want a trend line, and we click on that and it adds the trend line in there. And we also want the equation for it. So if we go down to label, use the equation, then it adds my y-intercept equation. So 0.035x plus 0.0217, right? Or y equals mx plus b. Okay, and that graph is ready to go. Now, if you are printing this out and you hit print on here, you're going to get all of this mess. So we want just the graph. What you're going to do is go over to the three dots. I like to call them mochi because it looks like mochi to me. And we're going to move it to its own sheet. And there it is on its own sheet now. So whenever you hit File and Print, it will print just the graph and not the data table. And this is good to go then. All right.